Ever feel like the resources and advice out there for women are missing something essential? I thought so too, which is why more than 6 years ago, I created She Said, She Said. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan, and after 3 decades in communications and then advocacy and now juggling motherhood and entrepreneurship, trust me, friend, I get it. Making a real impact takes more than just passion. It takes the right mindset, the right skills, the right investments, and the right community. On this show, we dive deep with incredible women from all walks of life who have been there. We uncover the secrets to building influence, navigating tricky relationships, and staying true to ourselves even when it's tough. And let's face it, it often is. I also throw in my own favorite productivity and life hacks, things that have shifted my perspective and might help you too. Wherever you are in your journey, my goal here is to leave you inspired to define success your way and to help you build the confidence you need to tackle your biggest goals. Subscribe today and let's unlock your full potential, your confidence, and your greatest influence. Hey friend, welcome back to She Said, She Said. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan, and I am absolutely thrilled to share today's episode. You know, throughout our lives, there are certain people who just see something in us that we may not even see in ourselves. That mentor who pushes us beyond our comfort zone, who challenges us, who opens doors, or who simply says, I believe you can do this. That is especially powerful when we ourselves may be filled with doubt. These moments of belief of somebody else in us can completely shape and oftentimes shift our trajectory. And that is the topic of today's episode. Today, I am really delighted to welcome back my dear friend, Dina Powell McCormick. Dina has had an extraordinary career spanning public service, where she served 2 different presidents, including as Deputy National Security Advisor. And later, she spent almost 15 years as a senior partner at Goldman Sachs. She was also the visionary behind Goldman's 10,000 Women and 10,000 Small Businesses programs. And now she is the vice chair at BDT and MSD Partners. Dina and I have been friends for the better part of, almost 3 decades at this point. Dina, along with her wonderful husband, U.S. Senator Dave McCormick, has written a powerful new book called Who Believed in You. It explores how the right mentor at the right moment can change not just a career, but an entire life. And this has been true for both Dave and Dina, as well as the folks that they talk to for this book. The book is really a collection of remarkable stories from a diverse range of leaders like Condoleezza Rice, Satya Nadella, Lloyd Blankfein, Tory Burch, Christine Lagarde, among many, many others. But they're stories that these individuals, in many cases, are sharing for the very first time. And they often talk about how unknown mentors, or mentors unknown to us, fundamentally shaped their journeys as leaders. But the book also includes some powerful data and a really helpful framework to help you make the most of your own mentoring efforts, whether you're the mentor or whether you're the mentee. Whether you're hoping to find a key person who believes in you or you want to become that catalyst in somebody else's journey, I promise you, friend, this conversation is packed with so many insights you will not want to miss it. So here is episode 325, my conversation about mentorship with my wonderful friend of many years and a repeat guest on this podcast, Dina Powell McCormick. Enjoy. Dina, welcome back to She Said, She Said.
Thank you, Laura. I'm so honored to be back and so excited to talk to you about who believed in you.
Well, my sweet friend, I am happy to have you, and I am so proud of you and this book. It is fantastic. I had a chance to cheat. You were sweet enough to send me an advance copy, so I got to read it yesterday, and it is just such a fabulous book. Okay, so let's back up a bit. Tell me how this book came about, because you wrote this with your wonderful husband, Senator Dave McCormick from Pennsylvania. Talk about how this book came about.
Well, Laura, I have to tell you, It really started during COVID. We had our six daughters. We have six between us. And, as so many children across the country lost a lot, lost the chance to go to high school graduation, lost the chance to go to prom. There was so much human connectivity that was lost. But I think we began to realize, because our daughters are now 25 to 18, that another big thing that was lost was mentorship. The opportunity in colleges, even in high schools, to have that one person who believes in you and
Yeah.
who, really helps you charge your course. And certainly, I had worked on a number of big mentoring programs, had the honor of doing that. And I just saw firsthand, one person can change your life. And then you go on to change the world. And Dave and I started talking to them about the fact that not both of us, we would not be where we are today without one or two people who really made a difference, who saw something in us, honestly, that we didn't see in ourselves. And then we just started, that turned into a conversation with them. And then we started asking amazing people across the country who believed in them and who was that one person. And of course, we've been a little busy the last few years. Dave's had a little going on. And so we actually pushed off publication a few times, and now it just felt like the right moment to kind of talk about what we say in the book. And you read it. It's not about the famous people that we're so honored tell their stories in the book, and in most cases the first time they've ever told these stories. It's about the people that you've never heard of,
Yeah.
without whom the amazing Condi Rices of the world and Satya Nadellas and Tory Burches, they at least believe they wouldn't be where they are without those unsung heroes. And think of the impact they've had in the world. And so our hope is that this book starts a new mentoring movement, where if you really believe someone changed your life, then you should believe you can change someone else's life. And that's really how we start to change the world.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. So you have been an incredible mentor to so many people, including myself. You also have created amazing opportunities to mentor others at the State Department and then at Goldman Sachs, and you continue to pay it forward. But maybe, Dina, let's take a moment and share a little bit with our audience about your own mentor story and how you had the benefit of so many mentors. You talk about this in the book, but I'd love for you to share a little bit of a sneak peek with our audience, a little bit about your own story.
Sure. Well, I really do feel, so blessed. And it really, the writing the book caused me to really go back and to think about those few people that just took a chance on me, saw something in me. As you know, I'm an immigrant from Cairo, Egypt. My family immigrated from a small Coptic Christian community to Dallas, Texas. We have our Dallas thing going together. And I always say, I didn't speak English when my family moved. But I was so young that I learned English rather quickly. Texan took me a little longer. It was a bit of a culture change. Um, and I grew up with my parents being wonderful, working so hard so their three daughters could pursue the American dream. They used to always say, Dina, Dahlia, and Denise, we left our homeland, we left our church, we left everything so the three of you can be anything you want to be, as long as you're a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. And I dutifully got into the University of Texas. I was going to head to law school. And yet, in sort of a crazy turn of fate, I met Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison. And when I met her, she was the only woman, honestly, that I'd ever seen in senior political office, government office in Texas.
Right.
And I was waitressing at the tavern to pay for college, had a little internship in the Texas State Senate. And she said, I think you ought to come intern for me and go to Washington. Never occurred to me. It opened my eyes to a whole new world. I had huge admiration for her. My parents weren't thrilled about it, and I've told you this story before. they
Right.
they sort of said, "What do you mean you're not going to law school? You're deferring for a year." But really, moving to Washington, working for her, having her mentor me, it took my life on a course that I hadn't even imagined, which of course led to the honor of serving two presidents and working at Goldman Sachs, and now as vice chair at BDT and MSD Partners. So, one person really did invest in me and change my life.
Yeah, it's such an incredible story. Obviously, it's how you and I got to know each other. And then I've been on the receiving end of your incredible mentorship where you've continued to pay it forward. So it's such an amazing story. And I love how it's all come together with this book. Because your wonderful husband, Dave, who is also a great friend, is not here with us today, maybe you could share a little bit about his story as well, because I know he also had some incredible mentors as well.
He really did. I mean, again, we were both blessed with, wonderful families. His parents are remarkable. I think you've met them, Laura, Jim and
Yeah.
Marianne McCormick, both educators in Pennsylvania. His father went on to be the chancellor of the state college system. So there was always a sense, I think, of, service and giving and the value of education. But Dave, and he tells it in the book, so I can say he was kind of a mediocre student and a mediocre athlete, to be honest. And he was sort of benched on the football team his junior year in high school, and a new coach came on board, and he had watched all the tapes and the films of the football team, and kind of midway through the season he called Dave over and he said, I think I'm going to make you co-captain of the team as the junior. And Dave said, why? I'm not even playing. He said, because I see leadership in you, I see
Mm.
leadership skills in you. And they went on to have an incredibly successful season, but without that coach, Dave just didn't even think of himself as a leader, and that's what led him to West Point. He got recruited to play sports at West Point, and of course, West Point changed his life. He was an Army Ranger. He served in the first Gulf War. We all served under President Bush together, of course, and then he went on to be a successful businessman. And ultimately, I think it's what led him to become or want to become a senator, to serve again. Service has been a big part of his life. But can you imagine? It really was that one high school coach who said, I think you're a leader. And
Yeah.
Dave never had thought about it that way.
Yeah, and it's oftentimes those really subtle, maybe really small nudges that you get from someone in your life who says, "No, you really can do this," or "You really should try this. This might be a great thing for you." They may not even realize sometimes the impact that it has on another person, and I think that's what's so beautiful about this story, about the stories that you tell in this incredible book. But there's a couple of other dimensions that really got my attention that I thought were so fascinating about what you guys are doing here and sort of how you talk about the power of mentorship. And it is as a way of bridging this enormous divide that exists around trust in this country, lack of trust in institutions, lack of trust in government, lack of trust in business leaders. I mean, the list goes on and on. Dina, talk to me about how is it that mentorship helps sort of close that gap?
Sure. Well, I want to hit on something that's really important that you said, which is how little it takes.
Mm,
As you saw in the stories of the book, it just took one or two sentences sometimes to the right person. Mary Barra, was a line worker at GM, and it was one boss who said, I really think you should apply for this higher office and this higher path. And it had just, no one had ever said that to her, and she couldn't believe it. And so I think that's part of what we hope we're inspiring
mhm,
is it may just take such a little amount of investing in someone that gives them that confidence. And then the other thing that you hit on is how often in the book people say, I really wish I had told them that before
mm.
while they were alive. I wish they had known that I became the person I became because of them. Christine Lagarde talks
Yeah.
about how she never told that teacher that without her, she would have never become Christine Lagarde. And this book has made a lot of people go back, the ones that we feature, and thank those people and say, I just felt like I really wanted to tell you, you changed my life. So those were, I'm so glad you picked up on those elements. And then you're right. I think really it's been for the last 2 decades, sadly, that the core institutions of our nation have been losing trust for a variety of reasons. Um, Sadly, business has lost trust. The media, even institutions like the clergy, the military had even begun to lose some trust. I mean, it is the highest. It's always ranked as the highest, and I think that's just such a sad thing because I think we have just become divided and untrusting. I really believe in the power of one person at a time.
Mm.
You have seen that. You've seen that in the incredible stories that you feature on She Said, and of course, you and Joel have been friends of ours for over 25 years. We've seen the power of one person at a time. If you try to get so lofty and think, you can only make a difference in the world if it's at scale, if you will, we'll never actually make the kinds of connections that we need. And I think that the reason mentoring is so important, is such an important part of that, is because it's one leader at a time.
Mm.
And without the right mentoring, leaders don't have the value system, the confidence, the faith in themselves that they can make a difference and pay it forward. And so I think mentoring, and we talk about the elements that are so important in mentoring. Trust is at the top,
Mhm.
to open yourself up, to be vulnerable, which is what you have to do if you really want a mentor that is going to, feel comfortable telling you the real tough stuff, the tough love, as we talk about in the book. Trust is at the top. And I think when people feel that sense of trust, um, they pay that forward in a trusting way. I'll give you one example because we are so proud of Who Believed in You, and we are so hopeful people will go to whobelievedyou.com to see the stories, to buy the book, which all the proceeds go to mentoring organizations that we've identified. But the book is just the beginning. We have a trailer out that I hope you'll link to in the podcast. And Michael Dell talks about the best advice he ever got. Ben Shapiro is on there, but so is Lloyd Blankfein, who is one of
Mhm.
my most important mentors. I worked for Lloyd for over 10 years when he was the CEO at Goldman Sachs. And I talk a little bit about some of the tough love he gave me. But in the trailer, he says something that just blew me away. Came from a very humble background. He, didn't really have anyone that told him how to dress, how to show up for interviews. And he was working at a law firm, and a very senior guy who he respected came up to me, said, "You just don't dress right. And I'm telling you that from my heart. And you don't know that you got to put the collars down of your shirts, they stick out." And Lloyd said no one had ever told him there's these little things called collar stays, and you put them in your shirt. And he said the fact that that man took the time to help Lloyd with something like that made Lloyd realize, wow, he cares about me.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to trust him to listen to the big things that I need to know.
Yeah.
And so trust is such a core piece of mentorship.
Yeah, and the other thing is he was open to it. A lot
Yes.
of times you will offer feedback, constructive feedback, maybe negative feedback to somebody. If they're not open to it, it's sort of a missed opportunity for both people. But Lloyd was open to that, what could have maybe hurt his feelings, heaven
Yes.
forbid. But he was
Yes.
like, you know what, that is it's such a gift that you've given me to
It's a
really,
gift.
right? It's a gift.
It's a
It's a
gift.
gift.
And Lloyd used to give me very tough love, as I said, and tough criticism. And it is a gift. How are you supposed to grow? How are you supposed to learn from mistakes if no one is giving you that feedback? And people can't be scared to give it to you. And I think that, I always tell my daughters, our daughters, that, you really need to find people that are going to give you the feedback that you need to grow. None of us have ever grown from success.
Mhm.
We've really all grown from failure and feedback.
Amen.
And I really believe that. It's so painful in
Mm.
the moment. It's so painful when you're kicking yourself and saying, "Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I messed up like that." But it is really a gift because you'll never do that again. And you'll learn for the next most important moment how to handle that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So this book has a number of dimensions that I really, really loved. Not only the inspiring stories, which you have been talking about this morning, but also it's a really well researched book. You did, I think, the first of its kind research survey with Yale School of Management, and you also created some core pillars for mentorship. Like we all know what mentorship means, but when we sit down to define it, we
Yeah.
might come up with different definitions. So you mentioned trust. Let's walk through some of the other pillars.
Sure. Well, and it is interesting that we wanted to have data. My husband is
Mhm.
a very data driven person, but it was the first time anyone had done a mentoring study. It was the Yale School of Management, as well as Morning Consult, and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
1,200 people. That's a large sample, actually. And what was interesting is what people identified as what they wanted out of mentoring. And we honestly thought, because it was a lot of high achieving folks, it was a mixture, but we identified that people didn't want transactional mentoring.
Mm,
Not, can you get me the interview? Can you fix my resume? Can you make that recommendation? Although that's very valuable and important. They wanted what we defined as transformational mentoring.
mm,
Someone who really cared about you. That was such an important, element, where you had shared values, trust, as I mentioned to them, and a deeper level of commitment,
mhm.
that I'm really going to invest in you. I hope you're going to take the good with the bad and know that it's coming from the right place of both trust and care. But that it's going to be more than just helping you get a job or helping you get ahead. It's really going to help you be a leader in every dimension of your life. And that was something that was really important, because I think too often today people see mentor or mentoring and they think that's how I get a job or advance in my career. To really be the well rounded leaders that we want people to be, it's got to be a much more deep commitment, and one that's really based on trust and vulnerability.
Yeah, yeah. And it becomes a real relationship as well. I think it kind of goes without saying, but it's, when it's just transactional, you never deepen that bridge to really create that connection that becomes a relationship ultimately.
Absolutely. And a multi-year relationship
Right.
where it's not just about the one job you're in or where you met that mentor. It is a sustaining relationship over lots of different arcs of your life. And once you build that trust, it's not easy. And so once you have it, you want to sustain it. And we talk a lot about how, and we're doing an event in New York coming up. I'm so honored to be joining Jane Frazier, the CEO of Citi, Mary Erdowis, the head of private wealth management and asset management at JP Morgan, Jenny Johnson, the CEO of Franklin Templeton, and Asahi Pompey, the president of the Goldman Sachs Foundation and the chairman of the Urban Investment Group. Four of the most amazing women I know on Wall Street. We are going to have a really honest conversation about how hard that is and
Right.
how mentors really matter. But we're also going to be talking to a couple hundred young women in finance. And the message that we all decided probably was the most important to pass along to that particular group is, be an effective mentee.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, if you're going to get 20 minutes of Jane Frazier or Mary Erdowis or Asahi Pompey's time, come in with a real thoughtful reason you wanted to meet them.
Amen.
Tell me, how I can improve on these areas. This is where I want to get to. This is my dream. Do you have thoughts on the most effective way that I can do that? And what have you learned? What do you think you wish yourself at my age would have known? I would really appreciate that, because the truth is, we want to be helpful. You, Laura, me, women, who really would like to mentor the next generation. Probably don't, we don't have an hour and a half, or regularly, maybe of course in an initial engagement, but then after that, shoot us an email. Can you read this over real quick? I need to turn it in. Could you recommend me for this program? I've already written the letter. Here's the email. Edit it. Make it easy, on your mentor. And it can be short bursts. Just this week, I've had 3 women who used to work for me. I'm applying for this new job. I'm at the end of the interview process. What do you think I should do? How do I get to the CEO? And it's just quick bursts. And I say, oh, here's the person you need to call. I'm happy to be a reference, do this or that. Sometimes it is really pragmatic advice that can be given quickly once you've developed that foundation. So I think being a good mentee really matters. And then, as far as being a good mentor, one of my just greatest sources of pride are the many women that worked for me when I was at Goldman or in the government. And you've had so many women in your career work for you. And I always like to ask women to think about, where are all the women that worked for you?
Mm.
Did they pursue and achieve their dreams, not just while they were working for you, but did they go on to do that? And I think if both men and women asked that question and thought about it as a legacy of their careers, we would be in a pretty remarkable place.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's beautifully said. You touched on something that I think is really important to talk about, because there's so much, I don't know, angst and maybe confusion about gender and mentoring, especially in this world that we live in, sort of post Me Too. What advice do you give your daughters about mentorship between men and women?
Sure. I am worried about that. I think candidly, men, and it comes out in the book, are anxious. A lot of times with their male mentors, mentees, it's easy
Mhm.
to go to a football game or grab a drink or, do whatever. And I think men think about that now a little bit differently when they're
Mhm.
mentoring women, particularly women who are working for them. And I'm worried about it because some of the greatest mentors in my life have been men,
Right.
and men in government, men in the private sector that really wanted to invest in me. And the reason male mentors are so important for women, particularly women working in male dominated industries, is unless a man gives you that feedback, you're never going to hear it.
Mm.
They also see how you are presenting yourself
Right.
in settings that only they can sort of see and judge. And what they're doing is they're saying, this is how it looks to most of the people in the room. Like it or not, most of the people in the room are men.
Yeah.
So let me give you some thoughts on presentation, or, how to close the deal, or whatever it might be. It's a unique thing. And that's a gift, kind of going back to what we said. So I do worry about that. And I hope that actually we talk about it in the book. We talk about how that comes out in the study at Yale, where there are different techniques that are
Mhm.
better in mentoring women and men. And we hope that that data will really help people who are mentoring, different genders.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about some of those different techniques?
I think men are scared to give hard feedback to
Mhm.
women.
Mhm.
And, I remember again, both Lloyd and the current CEO of Goldman, David Solomon, who is a very dear friend and a big mentor of mine. He can give you tough feedback though. And he views it honestly as a way to express respect, admiration, and investment in you. And, I remember both of them kind of saying, if you want to be at these tables, and these are hard tables, whether they are what you used to do, in the Oval
Right.
Office or the Situation Room, or here at the Management Committee at Goldman Sachs, definitionally, not everybody's going to agree with you. Definitionally, this is when lots of where the hard decisions come, and you need thicker skin. And I remember them both kind of saying that to me, and it was like my eyes kind of opened, mainly because I thought I was hiding it pretty well. And I said, "Oh, what do you mean?" And they said, "Not everybody's going to like you when you get to the senior jobs. Not everyone is going to agree
Mhm.
with you. And you just have to really make those tough decisions based on what you think is the right
Mhm.
way forward. And the chips will land where they land." And that is tough advice that I needed. And I think coming from such senior men was very important for me to hear. The other thing which we learned through 10,000 women, 10,000 small businesses, and 1 million Black women is that it's really important that the leadership team give feedback. And so, in some of those programs, when we had mentors at Goldman that were giving advice to these amazing entrepreneurs, many cases female entrepreneurs, it was really important that it was a senior partner at Goldman Sachs who was saying, I read your business plan. You got to make these three changes. That was invaluable to a lot of the graduates of the program. And I think it's important that that feedback be given kind of gender neutral, and that people feel they can give it that way.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that so much. I love that. Dina, I know you and Dave spoke to a group of mayors recently at the Yale School of Management. Maybe talk about what you learned from that particular group.
Well, it was really one of the first times that we were talking about who believed in you. And we shared why we wrote the book. We shared some of the stories. And then we asked people, who believed in you. And so many of the mayors, Mayor Johnson in Dallas, my hometown, shared an incredible story. The mayor of Pittsburgh talked about when Dave had come back to Pittsburgh after serving in the first Gulf War, and how, he'd made an impact as a CEO in Pittsburgh, mentoring people, and how important that was. But the one that just kind of blew me away was Donna Shalala was there. Of course, she has had a lot of jobs, including running the University of Florida. She told a story about being a young woman who wanted to put a softball team together, an all girls softball team. And she asked this gentleman who she knew taught the boys softball team to come and train them, because she thought that would help them in a lot of facets. And it gave her her first sense of confidence, because they ended up doing really well in the season. Well, you won't believe who that person was. It was George Steinbrenner.
No way.
That story has never been told. And so, what's so fun is uncovering all these extraordinary stories of mentors and mentees that, we've never heard of, and what an impact that had in their life.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, I hope.
And I have one more
Oh,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, please.
Laura, who believed in you?
So many people believed in me, including you, by the way.
Oh, thank you. But maybe tell one of the stories, because whether it was Chairman Donaldson or whomever, I just everybody we talked to, we're getting so excited to hear the answer to that question.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's hard to know where to start with that. I should have prepared for this question. And I was thinking about it. And you know what I got fixated on, Dina? Something that you said earlier is, when we don't have an opportunity to thank the person that really gave us such mentorship. And one of my mentors at PwC, and you mentioned Bill Donaldson, who obviously was an amazing mentor. Richard Shelby was an amazing mentor. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so many, I sort of hate to start naming names, but one in particular who's no longer with us was our general counsel at PricewaterhouseCoopers. And I was a young partner in a fairly senior role, but I was still, fairly untenured compared to other partners there. He was the general counsel and he adopted me, took me under his wing, gave me so much coaching and so much guidance, including that tough love that I needed. But he passed away from a brain tumor while we were
Oh,
working together, and it
so
was it
sorry.
was so tragic on every level. Not only was it a horrible tragedy for his family, it was a horrible tragedy for the firm. It changed so much. But it really made me think about the importance of thanking those people, just as you said, who have invested in you and made such a difference in your life and your career. And so that was one story that I think about, and I hope, to your point, that folks will take that advice and really go back to those folks that have made a difference for them and just say, thank you. I'm so grateful. You don't even know what an impact you had on me.
Absolutely. That is such a beautiful story. I don't think you've told me that before. That's extraordinary. I went back, there were so many for me too, but Clay
Oh,
Johnson.
right.
You remember
Yeah.
Clay, who sort of took me under his wing in a really tough role in the White House and really mentored me. I mean, really, like daily.
Yeah.
He was giving me coaching and advice, and no way would I have gotten the promotion that I did, that President Bush gave me, had it not been for Clay Johnson.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's just incredible. Well, I am grateful to you and to Dave, both as friends, and for this amazing contribution that you're making to so many folks. I hope people will get the book. It's called Who Believed in You. It's available on April 1st, but it's available now for pre-order. So be sure to check
Yes.
out the show notes for this episode 325. You can find the link where you can purchase the book. And Dina, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thank you, Laura. You are wonderful. Thank you for having me today. We hope the book is just the beginning. As I mentioned, we've now started a series of videos around asking those questions, not just who believed in you, but what's the best advice. Michael Dell is in the trailer, and I mean, he got such extraordinary advice at one moment when he had founded Dell, and it was critical. And his mentor, a gentleman he really respected, said, "When you see the problem, fix it fast. When you find the problem, fix it fast." And just something so simple like that even resonated, with me. Sometimes we sit on problems and that's never the right decision. So we hope it's just the beginning of a lot of people sharing their advice and their stories, because I think people do feel
Mhm.
that if we're going to get a little bit more united, we have to
Yeah.
have a common place we're trying to get. And whether you are a high school coach or a teacher, or a grandma, your voice can really change the life of somebody. And I think if you know that power that you have, then I hope we're going to create a new movement across the country and the world around mentoring. I mentioned the programs that we had built. I have to say, even at my firm today, BDT and MSD Partners, working with some of the most important investors, families, and founders, but even CEOs of
Mhm.
companies that we've invested in, it's so important to instill confidence. Confidence is critical. And a mentoring movement starts with investing in confidence in that entrepreneur, in that CEO, in that business leader, in that head of the nonprofit, in the chef. And I do think taking the time to do that is one of the greatest gifts that we can give.
Yeah, absolutely. The book is called Who Believed in You? Dina Powell McCormick, thank you so much.
I'm so honored to be with you, Laura. So honored to be on She Said, She Said. Thank you so much for talking about the book today. And I can't wait to see you next week at one of the mentoring events.
Wow, friend, what an incredible conversation with Dina. You know, I'm sitting here feeling inspired and reflective and oh so grateful about all the mentors in my own life. Those individuals who made such a difference for me. I mentioned a few of them in this episode, but there are so many others. And you're probably sitting here doing the same. But you know, one of the things that really struck me from today's conversation was Dina's point about how mentorship can rebuild connections in a world that increasingly feels so divided. I think that perspective is so brilliant. Really taking the time to invest in another person, whether you're the mentor or the mentee, it's what helps create those human bonds that transcend our differences. And I thought that was so brilliant. Now, friend, I am genuinely curious. Who believed in you? Who was that person who saw something in you before you even saw it in yourself? I'd love to hear your story. So drop me a message on Instagram. You'll find me at Laura Cox Kaplan, or connect with me on LinkedIn, and please share your mentorship experiences as well as any advice that you have for others, either in their role as a mentor or a mentee. I'd also love to know if today inspired you to reach out to a mentor you haven't thanked yet, or maybe perhaps encouraged you to become a mentor yourself. And don't forget to check out Dina and Dave's book, Who Believed in You? All the details and the links are in the show notes for this episode 325. And as Dina mentioned, all of the proceeds from the book go to mentorship organizations. So your purchase of the book actually helps create even more of these transformative relationships that we've been talking about, which is such a beautiful thing. Friend, thanks so much for listening to She Said podcast. I'm Laura Cox Kaplan, and I will see you next week, where we will continue to explore the strategies that help us build influence and impact in our own unique and special ways. And remember, She Said podcast is a weekly production of She Said Media. I'll see you next week.